Allianz. Supporting all 32 counties through the Allianz Leagues.
Hello and welcome to the Throw-In Independent.ie's GA podcast in association with Allianz. I'm Will Slattery. Delighted to be joined, as always, by Michael Verney. Michael, hello.
How's it going, Will?
Yeah, no, doing well. Another interesting weekend. Football only this weekend, so the big ball got the major showcase. Interesting times. It's funny the way it's shaken out with the lack of league finals basically across the board. It has kind of turned into, I suppose, more of a pre-season tournament in the end if we don't get those finals. But there's still some really interesting things coming over the next few weeks, like the football in particular with the promotion and relegation playoffs. It's funny the way they split the divisions at the start, but now it's set up for a really interesting couple of weeks.
Yeah, I was sceptical, I'd say, when you saw the league structure and you're wondering, is it going to be, are there going to be just a lot of phony wars? Are these games going to actually mean much? But there's some really appetizing games set up over the next couple of years. I was down in Ennis yesterday. Cork beat Clare by a point. Cork won their last two games, so they won 2 out of 3, and they end up in a relegation semi-final and they could win 2 of their 4 games and still be relegated back to Division 3. It's kind of, the flip of a coin with some teams. It's really, really, and these are, they're big, big games. Like if Cork were to go back down to Division 3 or any of these teams fall from Division 1, they're big, big games. And I think it's really, really intriguing for us. It whets the appetite for championship brilliantly.
Oh, massively. And we're delighted to be joined by Dick Clerkin once again on the show, and Martin Breheny for the first time this season to discuss the Allianz Football League action over the weekend. Guys, how are things?
Great.
Very good, Will.
Enjoying the sun.
Yeah, it was a brilliant weekend for weather-wise, and there was also some good action as well. Martin, I might go to you first. Obviously, we've finished up the round-robin portion of the league now, looking ahead to maybe the promotion and relegation games. But do you share the optimism that a lot of people are feeling about football, the way it's being played, the scorelines are being racked up, and maybe hopeful that it'll continue on into the summer?
Well, so we're always hopeful, but I certainly wouldn't be getting carried away. I thought the reaction after the last round of the league was completely over the top, but all the talk about all the high scoring and the whole lot. I mean, as I wrote in my column last week, I've learned one thing after 45 years in this business: not to be seen and not to be fiercely impressed by the last thing you've seen, because we've seen this before in the league, and then to come to the championship is completely different. So I'm not sure there will be an awful lot of changes. I mean, we're still back to the same old problem with the ball retention, where the teams retain the ball now for a minute and a half unchallenged, kicking it back to 40, 50 metres. That's still an issue. Look, it's encouraging, and we're always hopeful. But no, I don't. I think come the championship, it will be the exact same as it has been in other years. I don't think these high score lines, will continue. It just, as I say, history is against it.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a dampener from an Ulster perspective, given what we've seen over the last few weeks and how we've been kind of talking up the football, even over the weekend. Donegal Armagh, Tyrone, Monaghan, maybe slightly more of a traditional kind of game, but Donegal Armagh, high scoreline. Derry putting up another big score over the weekend. So, so where are you on this idea? Do you agree with Martin, or are you a little more hopeful?
No, I'd be a bit more optimistic. Wouldn't be hard to but I know, in fairness, I suppose you have to look at, are teams actually trying to do something different? Is it obvious from a coaching and team setup point of view that they're trying, or is it just the league and it's a wee bit looser and teams aren't fit? And I think for me, just looking at our own sort of Ulster focus up here with many Ulster Championship going on, there's definite signs that those teams like Monaghan, Tyrone, Armagh, and then and only rightly so pull Derry into the mix based on the performance. They're definitely trying to play a much more positive attacking point of style of football. Now, Martin's 100% right. There's still in that, there's an awful lot of lateral backwards pass. Now, there's an element I think we have to accept that we're never going to eliminate that out of the game. There's no going back to the future in terms of catch and kick. I think in terms of rules discussions, there has to be something that prevents a team going back as far as they are at times. But there is definitely signs that teams are trying to get the ball in sooner by virtue of the fact that they're keeping players inside. So even just take Tyrone and Monaghan. Now, it wasn't great. It was very stop-starty, very frustrating to watch from a supporter's point of view. God knows the interruption to GA go and then the interruptions by David Coldrick. Monaghan are trying to keep more forwards up front. Tyrone are trying to keep more forwards up front. Armagh are definitely, and Kieran McGean has definitely been trying to build a style of play that sort of gets the talent out of the O'Neill brothers and Stephen Campbell and these boys. So I think teams are definitely trying to do better. Will it be as positive as it has been come championship? Possibly not, but it's certainly not going to go back to really blanket defence, slow lateral stuff outright, I don't think.
Yeah, Michael, and just in terms of, as we kind of take stock after the 3 rounds, for you, are Dublin and Kerry a good bit ahead? Like, I'm very intrigued to see these semi-finals. I know there's no final or potentially no final at stake, but, to see how the Ulster counties come out of their division, Dublin playing Donegal, Kerry playing Tyrone, it'll be a nice benchmark to see, how competitive it will be across the board potentially.
Yeah, Dublin are definitely ahead. I don't know if I'd put Kerry into that bracket. They're probably going to need to see more evidence from Kerry. We're probably basing that on, a second half against Dublin and obviously the 2019 All-Ireland final. But I'm going to have to probably see a bit more from Kerry, I'd say, to have them as clear-cut second favourites, shall we say. The Ulster teams, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. They're coming up against different assignments completely now. It'd be interesting to see with the openness Kerry showed at the back, will that be exploited by we'll say an Ulster side? It'd be interesting to see. The Dublin have put in a lot of new faces, a lot of new players. I'd imagine they go with a more settled outfit in the semi-final, but it's going to be a sterner test for them. I'd imagine they'd be keen to get to a final if they can as well, to get another competitive game under their belt before they go into Leinster. But the localized leagues were great for what they offered. Now it's a bit more expanded, and I think you'll just learn a bit more. I think this will be the real acid test. Like up in Tyrone, they're going to learn an awful lot more about where they are, in particular. Kerry, I'm not sure. The jury is still out somewhat. They're going to have to produce something a bit more consistent, and I suppose leave less doors open at the back before they're real contenders.
Yeah, and Martin, obviously we have a really exciting weekend in 2 weeks' time with the promotion and relegation playoffs, but then there was a discussion on League Sunday last night, and the people have been having it about how, Division, I think 2 and 4, there's definitely not going to be a final. 1 and 3, potentially a final, depending on the pairings. Does it devalue things for you? Does it leave kind of a feeling of incompleteness if it goes down that route?
It does, but it was incomplete from the start with 3 rounds, really. I mean, it wasn't, you couldn't call it a league at all, really, more a small little blitz. But I think there is an issue here in terms of, and we were talking now about the semi-final, and they are very interesting. We're talking about the games that have happened. But then we head into the championship, 31 games we played in it. And you talk, Michael, I'm talking about Dublin and Kerry, but straight away, the advantage that they have over the teams from Connacht and Ulster, and we cannot ignore it. I mean, this is another year, it's another championship, and there's no back door, of course, which is the big issue. Now, you look at Dublin will just sail through unchallenged, virtually unchallenged in Leinster. I think Kerry, it's safe to say, will win Munster this year. They won't be caught a second time, and there's no evidence that the others are close enough to do them again this year. And then you have Connacht, where you have 3 genuine contenders, maybe 4 or 5 in Ulster. And it's just unfair. And there is no reason whatsoever, in my view, why there wasn't a backdoor. This could have been done, but you would have had to scrap the provincials and had a backdoor this year, straight or a knockout and a backdoor. It could have been done. It would have been a nice change in the year that's in it. Instead, we're talking about league semi-finals now. Whether they'll be interesting, we mightn't have a final. But the big one is the championship, and it's looming in coming closer, obviously very very quickly now. But we know what's going to happen here. We know that it's unfair. It's fundamentally flawed. It's fundamentally unfair. And COVID was a chance to address that, even in the short term, and see how it would go. And I think it was a great opportunity was lost, and it devalues the championship, in my view, that you have. In Munster, or in Leinster in particular, the biggest province, where we in absolute certainty we know who will win it, and that Dublin are guaranteed a place in the All-Ireland semi-final. They're obviously the best team by a distance, but they're also guaranteed by the way the draw is set up. So it's unfair, and I think it's a blight. We talk about rules, we talk about everything, but I think it's a blight of the championship. It's a blight on the year, and the year that was in it. It could have been changed and should have been changed to make it a bit more, to make it different, and try out something that we know will be coming anyway in the next number of years. So we may as well. This was a great year to do it. It didn't happen, but I think that's to be regretted.
Yeah, take like from an Ulster perspective, when you make a Martin's point there, obviously it's a bear pit up there. Like to win an Ulster title this year for Monaghan, they'll have to, beat Armagh at least. They'll have to beat I can't remember who playing the first round maybe, but then they, Donegal or Tyrone on the other side of the draw potentially. So it's a very treacherous path compared to, as Martin says, what Dublin might have to do.
Yeah, listen, without going down a rabbit hole on future fixtures and structures, I would have to sort of disagree with Martin there that this wasn't the year to do it. Now, okay, it might have been 3 months ago when we were setting up for the leagues and everything to start, that you had a calendar that started in February and ran through. But let's just bring ourselves back here and be fair to people who are trying to make fixtures. That was by week, month by month, your year was just tightening and tightening and tightening, and you were trying to, as best as you could, put in some sort of a structure that would give as many amount of games as possible, with a lead into a championship structure that could work and be ended. And don't forget the club championship. Everyone was, when it suited them, cheerleading the right for the split season and to give the club players, a good run in at the end of the year. And the CPA were running around, everyone was clapping them on the back around. Well, this is the consequence, lads. Okay, so you got to accept it. We had to have the championship wrapped up by sort of August, September to give the club players a year. So it's not fixing something in isolation. It was sort of the best of a very bad month and a very bad situation. Now, it's not ideal. Nobody's going to agree. And with the situation that you have in the last rounds of the league or the league finals or whatever, they're not going to be. It's not ideal, but it was far from an ideal situation. And then you couldn't have an open system that you had counties travelling all over the country at this time of the year when it's only in the last couple of weeks. People can do that. So there was a big context of COVID and what you could and couldn't do factored a lot of into this. I think we have to remember that when we're analysing where we're at the minute.
Dick, Galway have to go to Monaghan now for a knockout. I mean, what way around Galway going up to Monaghan for the championship? You said there that this wasn't the year to do it. It actually was the year to do it, and it wouldn't have any way have impacted on the club game at all, because if you had a 32 county knockout and a backdoor. And I showed on my column a couple of weeks ago, it was run on the exact same time scale. The problem is when you have different numbers in each province. So it could have been done this year. And I'm not blaming the fixture makers, by the way, because it wasn't. They had to deal with what they were dealt with. But I mean, I think the broader, the bigger picture, the broader scale here should have been. Let's have a look at this. But and I know, provincial council won't wear it, and that's the issue.
This is it. And the politics of making those decisions. It's not, it's not in the give of. The Penacrow Park to do that in one fell swoop. You can't just bin the provincial championships because it's cold and it's a good opportunity. It'd be great if we could, and we were able to have that executive power to make changes. It's just not the way the GA works. I
would love to have seen management committee perhaps come out and recommend it and see what happened. But then again, of course, the four provincial chairmen are on management, and they if they go back to the provinces, we know what they'll be told. Yeah.
I do think, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, that even the wee round robin system that we have, and I really do think park the Division 1 semi-finals, because with no finals they're a bit of a dead rubber, but everything else will be really good fixtures because so much is on offer. And I think there's a bit of an insight into what the future state could be in terms of how the league could blend into a championship in a nice tight situation, because I think these promotional and relegation playoffs will be like championship fixtures in their own right, because a lot of those counties, the league is as much of a competition, if not more, for them in the year than the championship is. And I think it'll be really cracking fixtures. So I think there's a wee nugget of something there going forward that can be learned on.
Yeah, Michael, in terms of some of the counties with massive things on offer, as Dick said, your own county Offaly in football, I think 2006 was the last time they were in the top two divisions. I'm reading this morning, Derry, another county, you have Meath and Kildare in a promotion playoff, given that they're kind of fighting to be maybe the biggest challenger to Dublin and Leinster, a lot at stake there. There's plenty to play for.
They're huge games. Dick is right, yeah. I do think that's maybe more the sort of system we should be going down. Like as Dick said, they're the biggest games of the year for a lot of those counties. I was down in Ennis yesterday, and even just the drama of it all. Cork had to win by more than 3. Clare were holding on. Cork needed a goal. They won by 1, but they needed to win by 4. Clare now play Mayo in what should be a right good game, and Clare are 70 minutes away from being up in Division 1, having started out in Division 4 in 2014 when Colin Collins started off there. Just a little aside there as well, and it probably went under the radar, but I'll be doing a piece for tomorrow's paper. David Tubridy became the top scorer in the history of the league yesterday across all 4 divisions. Have the scores for tomorrow's paper. You only need to score 2 points or more yesterday. He kicked 1-8. He's going since 2007, and it's funny because a lot of that would have been in 2004, but his tallies have gotten even bigger and bigger nearly as they've gone up through the divisions. And while Gordon Kelly and Gary Brennan kind of stepped away and they were 2 of the elder statesmen, he's still going strong. And like what a reward it would be for someone like him to get up to Division 1. I'd say like he kind of said he stayed on this year after the Tip game, losing the Tip last year. Like, are you telling me that if they get Division 1 football, he won't be staying on again next year? You can guarantee he will be. But that's just another little aside. They're huge games, Will. Massive games. Probably no more so than the Clare game. Clare and Mayo is an absolute huge game for the 2 of them.
Yeah, and I suppose, unfortunately, from a Clare perspective, like Mayo seem to be really motoring well through Division 2. You know, won their 3 matches, pretty comfortably, and they look, primed to go back up Division 1. But Clare have been really competitive, so you wouldn't rule it out. Martin, I suppose, obviously we spend a lot of time on this show talking about Dublin, Kerry, the Division 1 teams, but like, who are the teams maybe below that top tier that have impressed you, or anyone in particular that you've been really interested, I suppose, positively or negatively, depending on how they've gone?
Well, I suppose Derry would be the interesting one, because Derry's decline and the way they've shot down from Division 4 or 1 to Division 4 have in successive seasons. I mean, it's out of kilter with what Derry should be really and what Derry have been. So I think they're certainly a very interesting one to watch their progress, and certainly in the Ulster Championship. I suppose it's interesting as well to see Antrim in the final. Antrim have been very close on the Division 4 final or semi-final. They've just missed out on promotion for a few seasons in the trot, so that's interesting as well. I suppose the other one, the Cork. Now I know in a 3-match series, the margins are very narrow, but they could in theory dip back down to Division 3 again. That's the reality of it, and of course that would have huge possible implications for the championship. So that would be I suppose the dispiriting for them to some degree, because that's not where they shouldn't be in division. You would see there should be a Division 1 county all the time. They're not. They could nip back down, but I could fall back down. But Mayo coming up, I think was always on the cards, and I think they'll complete that. But I think Derry is the one. Derry is the one, you say, because they've been out of the mix in Ulster for such a long time now, and that's not where they should be. But I think they seem to be back in business.
Just a quick word on Louth as well, Will. Like Louth were beaten the first day out, had a massive win yesterday again. Sam Mulroy was unreal yesterday, and they were actually in big trouble. They were in big trouble at half time, and I don't know what exactly Mickey Hart said to them at half time, but they were a brilliant second half as well. There's so many. I don't think there's ever been more subplots to a league than this, and the fact that there's 2 divisions within the divisions. There's 8 different stories going on within those different leagues, and there's so many different things going on there. It's definitely been one of the, I know Martin said it was more like a blitz, but I would definitely say it was one of the more exciting blitzes anyway.
Yeah, and it's funny talking about fine margins, like Antrim 3 wins from 3, but 3 1-point wins as well. So very, very fine. Like they beat Louth by 1. And then Louth went on to beat Leitrim by 9 and Sligo by 10, whereas Antrim have just been very, very close run games. But Derry is the interesting storyline, I suppose, for a lot of people, given that, like, I don't know if it's being unfair to Rory Gallagher, but a reputation as a very defensive manager, and yet Derry in this league. I know you touched on Shane McGuigan's contributions in your column today in the Irish Independent. I think he has 220 across the 3 matches, which is huge scoring. You mentioned his form for Slot Neil and whether that had been maybe translated into the inter-county arena, but he's really hit the ground running this year.
Yeah, listen, I do a bit of work up in just beside the Lavy Club in Derry, and I'm up there and back up there tomorrow, so I'll get always chatting ones and getting an insight into the rivalries and what's going on behind the scenes in Derry. And Martin would know well enough as well over the years that for the talent and the passion that they have for GA up there, like where they've been at county level, just not acceptable. And they know that, and they have been putting better structures at county level. They are getting, a better sense of continuity together, and always got good competitive underage teams. You just couldn't gel it all together. So like there's a real strong cohort of Slaughtneil players, Chrissy McCaig, and leading up to young Wigan up front. Now, as I say, he's a real talent. Like, people would have talked about him, but maybe just because Derry weren't doing anything, he never got the standout. But like, just looking at him against Cavan, like, physically, and I suppose that's one thing right across the board has really caught my eye: the conditioning and the pace and the skill level of a lot of these teams. For what now? Maybe they've been doing more training than just the 4 weeks than they've been given. But like, and him alone, like, I read a column too when I was just doing a bit of research on him from the column today. Like, he was talking about how he was been pushed to work on his right foot because he was predominantly a left-footed player. And then against Cavan, lo and behold, he kicked 2 lovely right-footed players. So a real complete footballer, really lovely player to watch. So yes, and rightly so. Now Derry be looking at a Donegal, a likely Donegal quarter-final with an opportunity to really have a cut at a big team, especially if Donegal are going into that game without Michael Murphy, who they'll have to wrap up in cotton wool. So absolutely Derry. Very impressed with Armagh as well. Well, like, in another year, I don't think they'd be in a relegation playoff. They probably would have done enough to get enough points to stay up on their own right. Again, trying to play a decent brand of football, good forwards, just a bit ropey at the back. They could do with a few standout performers out there, but from 8 onwards, they're not bad at all. Offaly, shout out to Mike's own, not before time, bit of positivity coming into the country, and it's great to see, like, an opportunity to get back up into the top half of football. So lots of good subplots, and I think a lot of it's to do with a sense of, God, with everything that's going on over the last year and a half, let's go out and play a bit of football, a bit of positivity, because it's bad enough playing negative, bland football in front of crowds and TVs. It's actually soul destroying doing it in empty stands when there might be not much to play for. So I think it's not a coincidence that you're seeing a lot of this positivity coming right across the country.
Yeah, and the weather certainly helps to play more attractive football. Michael, what about Offaly? Like, what's the kind of mood down there? I suppose John Monaghan, when he was announced, I suppose people were maybe a little bit of a surprise at the appointment. He hadn't coached the inter-county team for quite a while, but he's had them pretty competitive, even in the 2 seasons where they didn't get out of Division 3. They'd often find ways to lose games very narrowly. Like, I remember there was an own goal in injury time in one game, and there was another one a few they lost leads in. But on the cusp of promotion, which would be a huge achievement.
Yeah, no, they've been. The one thing is, since he came in, they've just been really competitive. They've lost a couple of games, particularly last year, lost a couple of league games that they definitely shouldn't have had. But they've just been really competitive and really, really solid. I remember being in O'More Park when they played Laois in a qualifier, and they were there or thereabouts with 15 or 20 minutes to go, and they're just a bit raw, particularly around the middle of the park. A lot of guys are after filling out a lot in the last couple of years. You've kind of like new leaders of this team. Owen Carroll midfield, absolutely brilliant footballer. Like Rory McNamee, Bernard Allianz after stepping up a bit more too. And obviously they have Niall McNamee coming off the bench now with all his experience and been able to kick a couple of points as well. I think he's made 100 competitive appearances for Offaly. I think I saw the other day. I actually saw a shaven head Niall McNamee from 2003. I was actually at the game against Laois. He made his debut while still a leaving cert. I think he was only 16. I think he played minor the week before, and he's still going strong with all the problems he's had, and he had a lot of problems with concussion last year as well. So he just seems to have gotten everybody to a really, really good level, and it's kind of fine margins when you're around at Division 3. A couple of points the wrong way and you're down towards Division 4. A couple of points the right way and you're up towards Division 2. And we definitely see Fermanagh as a winnable game for us. So hope springs eternal. As I said a couple of weeks ago, and in the one weekend, we had the hurling team, the football team, Camogie ladies football winning, and Shane Lowry coming 5th in the USPGA. Things are springing on. Things are springing on as well. It's going well.
Yeah, of course we're jumping around from team to team, but with so many storylines, it's kind of inevitable to do that. Martin, I was interested to get your opinion on Galway and where they're at. Obviously, when Pádraig Joyce first came in before the lockdown, they were probably getting more positive publicity than any other team. Didn't go well after lockdown. They took that big beating by Mayo and lost to them again in the championship. And now it's been a mixed league campaign, beating Roscommon, competitive against Dublin but not winning, and obviously that bad result against Kerry. Where are they at for you? And I know Damien Comer's got another injury now. I think a thumb issue, which isn't ideal.
Well, you'd have to say that they're second in Connacht, and they're not All Ireland. They're not at the very top end of the All Ireland market. Simple as that. I think the Kerry game, I suppose you'd have to just call it an aberration, really. I mean, I suppose what was disappointing there was that they didn't show a whole lot of heart, which was very disappointing. But beat Roscommon, much better against Dublin yesterday. They did quite well, but they still have you still feel that defensively that they're not really good enough to be in the top, for our Ireland at All Ireland level. It's hard to. Having said that, of course, if it's they're on the same side as Roscommon, and then Galway Mayo, like last year they only lost to Mayo by a point in the Connacht final. So those games, Galway Mayo Roscommon, and those three, they're very much laws unto themselves. You don't know, but certainly this time last year, before the lockdown, they were flying. Haven't recaptured it. Mediocre enough this year to some, and Damien Comer injured again. That's a setback for them, and they have quite a few other injuries as well. So Pádraig has work to do, and there's no doubt about that. And whether he has the material to work with, I think that is the issue. Really, there was a view there a few years ago that there were a lot of great young talent in the county. I'm not so sure it's there. I mean, Mayo's transition, for want of a better word, has been much smoother and much quicker. And people thought, there were people even in Mayo saying that wasn't going to happen when that team sort of broke up, but it has happened. Galway haven't kicked on, and I think there'd be some degree of concern over whether they will be able to do that this year.
Yeah, and I think the injuries to Damien Comer can't really be underestimated. His last full season was 2018 when Galway were quite competitive, got to the Ireland semi-final, and he's just hasn't been fit. A succession of unfortunate injuries. I think there was playing a soccer match on Stephen's Day. He badly injured his ankle, I think, and ended up missing basically a full year. So you have to get, I suppose, a bit of injury luck too. Dick, your own county, Monaghan as well. 2 draws to finish out their campaign into a relegation playoff against Galway as well. Like, what's your assessment? You seemed, I suppose, pretty positive in reading your column today.
Yeah, but positive insofar as that the expectations were, a wee bit ropey going into it, because a lot of the team is a lot of new faces coming in, and obviously with that there's always that question mark whether they can make the step up to senior level and again at Division 1, and some of the older heads as well, like you get into your 30s, injuries and all the rest can, I know some of the guys have had kids recently and all that sort of factors in, so I knew a lot of stuff was going on there that mightn't necessarily lend itself to being playing at your peak. So taking that on board, the way they performed now, the first day against Armagh, they got off to a horrendous start and they just never really got into any sort of flow. But I'd be very encouraged with the way they performed away from home, remember, against Donegal and Tyrone and Omagh. Could have won both games, so they couldn't, we might talk about the relegation controversy that with Pádraig Joyce, he just needs to be called out and a few things on that. I'll come to that in a minute. But, so I think they had a really tough assignment, three games away from home to compete well, and definitely giving the young lads plenty of game time is really encouraging. So like going to a quarterfinal against Fermanagh. If they win, I'm not too worried what way, to be honest with you. If they stay up in Division 1, it'll be great. But listen, a lot of those young lads will need a bit of breathing space to develop over the next few years. And like Mayo have shown this year, dropping down to Division 2, possibly for a year to do that, is not necessarily an awful thing. So I'd be very confident looking towards basically an Ulster campaign. I will that, yeah, absolutely. There's nothing to fear from anything, be it Donegal, Tyrone, but yet the overall competitiveness of Ulster is growing because you have Armagh, you have Derry, Cavan, heavy wears the crown, as they say, are up facing an uphill battle. But yeah, so be very encouraged, well, to be honest with you, what I've seen so far.
And Pádraig Joyce.
Well, I think, right, a couple of things. He's wrong when he says that Monaghan have been rewarded, right? That's just factually incorrect. He needs to be called out on that. Monaghan lost the only home game. Monaghan only had one home game in their three match series, and that was against Armagh. Okay, the other 2 were away fixed games. So Monaghan going into it had 2 away games and 1 home game, and they lost that only home game to Armagh. Okay, so even if they had not had a ban put on them for their COVID breach, the scenario that we're facing now still would have been the same, because Monaghan had 2 away games versus Galway. Now, you can make the argument that that's an unfair way to decide, and I would agree on that, but not on the basis of Monaghan being rewarded for their COVID breach. That's just factually not wrong, right? And he shouldn't be allowed to get away with that. That's not fair and that's not right. So play them. He's trying to play the man, not the ball here. Now, there's a bit of karma at play here. Martin, remember this back in 2012. We unfairly, I would have felt at the time, lost a home game in the league and ended up playing Galway in Longford we ended up playing 5 games in Division 2 versus 2 at home, and lo and behold, who comes off the bench to drop us down into Division 3? Pádraig Joyce. So maybe there's a bit of karma at play here now that the days are been balanced a wee bit, You
got to love that about the GA. People never forget.
I never forget. No, and another thing as well, and I think we just need to be careful as well. This sort of saying that Monaghan were wrong in what they done, and they were rightly, sanctioned for it. But I don't think any managers out there should be holier than thou in terms of that every team done what was supposed to have been done. Monaghan were rightly called for what they done, and they were rightly penalised, but I don't think it should be extended into any more than they do. So I think Pádraig just needs to check himself a wee bit on what he's coming out at the minute.
But take one thing about it's not a question of Monaghan here, it's a question for Dublin as well, and it's a question of the punishments involved in these things. Taking home advantage away from a county for breaking out of the rules, and this time it was the COVID rule. Before we had teams going away on weekends away or whatever. It's not strong enough of a punishment. It should be points deduction, because it really doesn't. As it happened, it wouldn't have mattered here anyway, because Monaghan finished. Monaghan would have been in a relegation situation anyway, and Dublin would have qualified as a semi-final. But it's hardly a punishment for a county to lose just a home. Like Dublin had to a big deal had to go down to Thurles to play Kerry. Really, given the offence and the gravity of the offence and the time that was in it, was a very small.
Listen, Dublin could play out in the front lawn here and it wouldn't matter. But in Monaghan's context, are you trying to tell me, Martin, that losing that game, Monaghan narrowly lost against Armagh, and that should have been at home? We know the advantage at home. So I would argue that sanction Monaghan was very penal at Monaghan for the way the thing fell, because they took a game that was at home that they would have felt that they should have been able to win, and it cost them on the day. So I think in Monaghan's case, whatever but anybody else, it definitely was a very penal issue.
The managers as well. The managers are missing from the side.
And the managers as well. Now that's sort of immaterial to a point, but definitely losing the fixture in Monaghan's case was a very hard felt up here, Martin. The fact that they already had 2 away. If the draw had been made and they had only 1 away, the fact that they already had 2 away and then the only one at home that they had was taken off them, that was hard. And then the fine margins that they find themselves in the relegation playoff, I think it's a strong enough argument to say that losing that home fixture was enough to see them where they're at.
Given the gravity of the offence involved this time, I don't just focus on Monaghan or any county that was. Given the gravity of the offence, I don't think that losing home advantage was enough. But that's and I never have. I always felt that they did it. It happened as well, as I said. Remember a few years ago. I think it was Waterford hurlers, Waterford and Laois and Armagh because they went away on a weekend away. And oddly enough, Dublin footballers escaped that time, although they went to some historical tour of Germany or of France and Belgium. Yeah, but
I think maybe you're right. In a normal year, when you had maybe 7 games, but to cut points in a sort of a 3 game would have been extremely harsh. But maybe in a normal year, with a wee bit more flex, I would say you could be right there, Martin.
I think Dublin were commemorating World War I soldiers or something in Belgium, if memory serves. But yeah, it certainly adds a bit of spice.
As you do before the championship.
Certainly adds a bit of spice ahead of the Galway Monaghan game and what should be a really exciting promotion relegation weekend. But for now, Dick, thanks so much for joining us. It's now time to turn our attention to the Allianz Hurling League, and delighted to be welcoming John Mullane to the show. John, how are you?
How are you going on, Will? Not too bad.
Yeah, well, good. Thanks. Great to have you on. It was a quiet weekend on the hurling front, just a Kilkenny versus Wexford game. Kilkenny running out pretty big winners at the end. But I suppose it's a good time to kind of take stock of where we are after the opening few rounds of the hurling league. For yourself, what team, maybe if you have to pick out one at this moment, is kind of jumping out to you for good or bad reasons, that you're either surprised they're doing well or surprised that maybe they haven't quite hit their straps yet?
Yeah, well, look, I suppose results don't lie, and I suppose the results, you kind of got to look at probably Kilkenny in their division and Cork in their own division. How Cork are going approaching the league. They seem to be going all out. We talked about that consistency that was missing from Cork down through the years, and I suppose that's the one thing that they're going after in this league is building up a bit of consistency and trying to win matches and taking it into the championship. And likewise with Cody and Kilkenny, you know, it was a massive game for him there yesterday. You know, for him to try and get the win, and he got the win. And I think he comes to after the match. There's one thing that you know, you'll never associate with a Kilkenny team or a Brian Cody team, is them not having the right attitude or not approaching matches in the right manner. And you know, Brian Cody's team, they approached the game in the right manner. There was no shadow boxing. Went ball headed for the win, and they got the win. And you know, I think we've seen it yesterday. It's the first time they've beaten Wexford, I think, since 2018, and it was a massive win for Kilkenny. So for me, I would think those two teams, Kilkenny and Cork, will have been the standout teams of the league so far.
Yeah, Michael, because Kilkenny are an interesting one. We touched on it. I think it was with John in the first, before it started, about Kilkenny and the noise around Brian Cody. And we were kind of making the point that their results have actually been good. It's not as if they've fallen off the face of the earth. And, you know, even yesterday, TJ Reid, as always, delivering 118 of a 227 haul is pretty impressive. Billy Ryan chipping in with 1-4 as well. They're nicely primed in that side of the league. I know, again, like the football, there's no league final unless they play in the championship, but it's no harm with the championship starting so soon, and I think they're slated to potentially play Wexford again, to lay down a marker like that yesterday.
Yeah, 100%. It's amazing. Teams go up and down and their graphs go up and down. Kilkenny under Cody generally just stays the same. Just say you're a professional punter. If you're punting Kilkenny, you know what you're going to get out Kilkenny every day. You're going to get this honest effort. And while other teams waver, they stay the same. A couple of things on the game, like TJ Reid 118. Like in a couple of years, like he won't be around. We probably need to appreciate that even a bit more. It's just like if he misses a free, we're almost crying like that there's something off. Like he's putting up these ridiculous scores. I put his last 4 or 5 years with club and county, I'd compare it with what anyone has done over a 4 or 5 year period. He's been absolutely unbelievable. He just makes the extraordinary just look so simple to him. And even like Billy Ryan is a player we've talked about before. I think there's shades of Eddie Brennan. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Eddie Brennan or anything like that. I just think he's the same clubman as him, Greg Ballycallan, and he just has that kind of killer instinct to him. He was brilliant yesterday. He's only on the field 49 minutes. And he scores 1-4. And they've a lot of other good players. I think they learned a lot as well. They didn't start out with a man marker on Rory O'Connor, and Conor Brown ended up on him and was able to quieten him. I think that's something that they'll use if they play come championship time. Couple of other players as well, like James Bergen has been brilliant throughout the league. He probably missed a couple of balls yesterday. The ruthlessness of Cody strikes again. He was taken off after 23 minutes. I'm sure he won't be thrown in the scrap heap. I'm sure he'll get another go at it. But it just shows you how ruthless it is. John said in his column on Saturday, that there's nobody out there, better equipped to keep Kilkenny on their toes than Cody, and he definitely has them on their toes. And they're playing a bit smarter now as well. Like a lot of the time, they were flooding back bodies into defence. Sometimes there was only 2 men up. But when they played ball into Reid or John Donnelly, it was smarter ball. It was out to the side. It was away from the sweeper. And they'd loads of willing runners then flying through. There was bodies flying everywhere looking for ball off the shoulder. So like they're in a great position. As regards Wexford, like I just think it's hard. If they were, I'm not saying they were playing possum, but if there was some element of a ruse to yesterday's performance, it's just so hard to turn that around in such a short space of time. So I find it hard to believe that was the truth. Davy had beaten Cody 8 of the last 13 times they'd played, and he generally set a marker down in even Walsh Cup or League, and they'd gone on to do well against Kilkenny. When they beat in the championship, they'd gone on to do well when they played well against them in the league. So big question marks over Wexford. But with Kilkenny, if Limerick dip a small bit, which it looks like they may have, Kilkenny will be there or thereabouts to take advantage. So I think Cody will be delighted with where he has his troops.
Yeah, and just on Wexford, reading Brendan Cummins in today's Indo is interesting. He thinks there might be some scar tissue from that 2019 semi-final defeat to Tipperary where, with a man up, I think they were 2 or 3 points up with 15, 20 minutes to go. They looked primed to make an All-Ireland final against Kilkenny, ironically, and didn't get the job done. And he thinks he's a bit worried about where they're at the moment, which I thought was an interesting way to look at it. Martin, for you, at this juncture of the National League, the lads have mentioned Kilkenny and Wexford there. Either those teams or anyone else that's jumped out to you or anyone that's caught your eye?
Yeah, well, just one point on Wexford before I come to that. I suspect that Wexford might have hit a ceiling, and I think in terms of depth of panel and the talent, I suppose, available to Davy, I think it's possibly not as extensive as some of the other managers have, and I think that they've hit a ceiling, and it's a high ceiling in fairness for them. But I don't think that they're going to that there will be serious All-Ireland contenders. I really don't. But who was impressed? I think Cork are the very interesting one, because over the last number of years, Cork have had the worst defensive record of all the teams in Division 1. In fact, they were actually worse, I think, the last 2 years than Laois, and who are obviously struggling out at the bottom end of the table in terms of defensively. So they could score huge amounts, but they conceded an hour and and that's why I think that the appointment of Donal O'Grady as a whatever his actual role is, but we know his real role is that it's to work on that defence. I mean, O'Grady is one of the smartest defensive. If you talk to him at all, he's really smart defensive coach, and I'm curious to see how they'll shape up for the rest of the year with O'Grady there, because they're certainly shaping up well so far, and that is the key. Can they get a bit meaner? I mean, it's all very fine having the fella scoring loads at the other end, but they weren't tight enough defensively. That's going to be the key to how much progress they can make. Bear in mind, they haven't won the league since 1998, which is absolutely beyond belief for Cork. So I'm looking to see how that, if defensively, if they tie up, because they have the forwards, they have scorers, they have plenty talent, natural talent, much more so now, I would say, than Wexford. So I think that they're real genuine contenders if they can tighten up their defence. O'Grady is working on that. And that to me is one of the fascinating things to keep an eye out for the rest of the league, and far more importantly into the championship. Because if he works it on even a slight tweak, a small improvement, a 10% or 7 or 8% improvement in the defensive giveaway, and they're real All-Ireland contenders.
Yeah, John, because it was so interesting when Donal O'Grady was announced to be joining that backroom team, because already you have Kieran Kingston as manager, you have Ger Cunningham in there, you have Dermot O'Sullivan, now Donal O'Grady. Like there's a lot of big personalities with a lot of coaching pedigree there. Like, so to bring in an All-Ireland winner like Donal O'Grady on top of what they had was very interesting, I thought. Yeah,
but any noises that are coming out of Cork, particularly from the players, on Donal O'Grady, seem to be extremely positive. And, Martin is 100% right. His track record speaks for itself. You look at what he done with Cork back in the mid-noughties, was incredible. And that was off the back of, a really tight 1-9 unit where Cork knew their 1-9. They were so strong from 1-9 that back then their forward division wasn't as strong, but their 1-9 was extremely strong. And I think that's going to be the emphasis from Donal O'Grady. He's getting a solid 1-9. And they're starting to find out, they seem to be settling on Mark Coleman playing in that deep line, number 6. They seem to be getting 2 runners then into midfield, and 2 tight cornerbacks. I'd say you have Colin Spillane in one corner, and then the other corner is probably going to be up for grabs. So I think, it's getting that settlement from 1-9 over the course of the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to find out an awful lot more about Cork. And I think if they, as Martin said, if they can get that settlement in 1-9, they have the firepower up front to take on anybody. But I think that's going to be the emphasis Donal O'Grady is going to tackle in the next couple of weeks, is getting a solid 1-9 foundation at the back.
Yes, certainly an interesting one to watch. And what about your own county, John? Waterford, like a big result for them last time out, beating Limerick. Just looking back to last year when they met twice in the championship, and Limerick had a good bit to spare. Is that a big psychological moment for the team, do you think, or is that overstating it?
Yeah, I was talking to one or two of the Waterford players, and it's a game that they had penciled in, but that were going to target, and that was evident last Sunday watching it, that they set a target. Limerick seemed to be the target for every team, and it was no different against Galway up in Salt Hill, and likewise down in Welsh Park. I think it was a game Waterford had to win. 20-25 minutes, to go. The elements of a strong breeze behind them, and the numerical advantage as well. But they passed the test. I mean, if they failed to win that match, given the circumstances of how it played out, we probably would have been riding off Waterford. So I think that's a great asset that this team has going forward into the championship, is that they're able to, when question marks are thrown at them, they're able to come with the answers. And I think, we'll probably find out a bit more about Waterford up in Salt Hill Sunday. Will he persist with Ozzy centre back? He was very good against Limerick the last day out. But look, I think people are probably too quick to write him off. They're probably missing their best player in Ty de Burke. But if Ozzy can fill that number six slot, Conor Gleeson going back in corner back, steadying the ship back there, I still think they have the firepower up front. Shane Bennett is coming back into the mix. Patrick Curran, they still have the firepower to take on the top teams. But what's crucial is getting that number 6 position right. And I think if they can get that right, I think they'll be right in the mix.
It's the funny, Will, just because Limerick have dipped a small bit.
Was literally about to say that, yeah.
The optimism, and rightfully so, because last year they just looked a step ahead of everybody. They've dropped a small bit. They have a bit of time, but they don't have a huge amount of time to get back to those levels. You're looking at 4 or 5 weeks. So all of a sudden, Limerick drop, other teams go up a small step, and all of a sudden the gap isn't that big.
Yeah, Martin, what have you made of Limerick's league campaign so far? They haven't won a game, which, considering they won every single match they played, I think, in 2020, it's a bit of a surprise to say the least. And interestingly, they play Cork next, and they play Cork in the championship. So, it'll be interesting. Would there be a lot to read into this game, you think? Or is there an element of shadow boxing purely because they do play in a bigger fixture in a relatively short space of time after that?
No, I don't think it'll be shadow boxing. Why would it be? I mean, I know we talked earlier on about Brian Cody, and Brian Cody's attitude was that if you had a challenge game, you went out to win it and go flat out to win it. So I think no, it's important for Limerick, and it's important for Cork. I mean, if Limerick lose, it's that would be 4 games without a win. Not exactly the end of the world, but you see, I think as well, perhaps, and Michael touched on it there, but I'm not. That there was a view, perhaps a misguided view generally, that the Limerick were miles ahead of everybody, and that once an idea like that takes root, it's very hard to stop it. But were they? I mean, there were 1 score ahead of Galway last year in the All-Ireland semi-final, who lost to O'Kenny at a crucial time. So I don't think they were that far ahead of all the chasing pack. They certainly they were ahead. There's no doubt about that. But the idea that they were miles ahead and going to dominate like Kilkenny did for a number of years, I'm not sure that was ever justified, really.
I suppose when they win every game in a year, it's a very impressive achievement, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely, Will. But that doesn't mean they're miles ahead of everybody else. It's a little bit the same, say, with Dublin, the football, who haven't lost are there since 2015. But you look at how close they've been to Mayo and to Kerry or whatever. So they're certainly the best team, no questioning that, but they weren't miles ahead. And so now when others have won or beaten a few times, or they've lost a few games and drawn or whatever, inevitably people say they're slipping back. But they were never that far. They were never that far ahead. They were ahead, not that far ahead. And we shall see now what they're made of. But I mean, others, they were never at a stage where others didn't believe they could beat them on any given day. Most of the top contenders anyway.
Big thing, Will, as well, is they have looked, their cage has been rattled this year, and they haven't reacted particularly well to it. Dermot Burns getting sent off after the final whistle in Galway. Kyle Hayes getting sent off the last day. Seamus Flanagan getting sent off as well. There's 2 suspensions they're carrying into the Cork game. Even John Kiley's comments after the Galway game when his cage was rattled would suggest that they're a small bit unnerved. They've kind of had, as you said, like, they didn't walk through last year, but they did win every game last year. So they kind of had it their own way. They haven't had things their own way this year. They have a short time frame to turn it around. So it's going to be interesting. Like, it's not like your typical, a bad performance in February we'll have you right in June. It's, a bad performance in May, and we'll see how this weekend goes, and all of a sudden you're looking to turn around in 4 weeks' time. So it's going to be interesting to see if by round 5 we've seen I tell you what, this weekend is when we're really going to learn something about Limerick, because with due respect to Westmeath, they have Westmeath in the last round, so we can't read too much into that. So it's going to be interesting to see this weekend. And as I said, they're going to be down Hayes and they're going to be down Flanagan, so they're already without 2 of their most influential players. But
in their defence, I mean, the last 3 occasions they've gone out and played against the opposition they're coming up against, they've had relatively 8, 9, 10 of their All-Ireland winners. They've never had close to 12, 13, 14 of the potential 15. And I think, when they do have all their big hitters on the field, there's no question, they are the team to beat. And I think they are the team that everyone is going to have to beat come the championship. And I don't think Kiley will be overly worried, even if they lose the Cork the weekend and they lose another game, if it's 3 games in a row. I think Kiley will the trust will be there, and I think Kiley will trust his team, will trust his management team that they'll be ready for Cork come the championship.
No, that's why it's set up so interestingly this weekend, because there's so much we can learn from it, even if we overstate it in a way, but it'll definitely create a lot of noise if Limerick were to lose, even if ultimately they'll be in a good stead for the championship. John, I will be interested to get your opinion on just the kind of the start, how the games have developed generally. There was a lot of commentary about the amount of frees being given, and that Hurling was not in a good place compared to what it was a couple of years ago because of maybe tinkering with rules. John Carley spoke very strongly about it. Jackie Tyrrell on League Sunday spoke very strongly about it, how they were both worried about the direction of the game. John Carley went as far as saying when crowds come back, there wouldn't be many people paying in to watch it if this is how the game is going to be played and refereed.
Yeah, well, I think over the course of the couple of years that we've even been on this podcast, that we're always questioning referees' decisions when at the start of a league, and generally they kind of settle down. Now look, I think yesterday you had TJ Reid scored 118. There's no way he's going to score 118 come championship, and we actually seen it the previous week where referees were starting to adjust to the rules. And I think come the championship, I think things will settle down. I think, what's the scoring ratio of frees generally? It would be maybe between 8 to 10. That's what you become accustomed to having in a game. And I think it will settle down. And I think I just think we have to stall the ball. In regards to the game, the game is evolving. What's very interesting is that the 3 traditional counties now of Cork, Tipperary, and Kilkenny, they're all adapting to how the game is being played. You look at Cody, and the biggest admiration I have for Cody is that he's always freshening up his backroom team. Look at his backroom team now. He's Martin Comfort, former player under now, Connor Phelan, really young guys that know the game, and I think that's a testament to Cody. It's a testament to Liam Sheedy, and it's a testament to Kingston, who are freshening up their backroom teams constantly, getting the right guys in, who can adjust their teams to playing the way the modern game is being played. And I think, look, ultimately, I think we just gotta roll with it. The game changes. It's the way the game is being played right now. But I think the winner of this year's All-Ireland will most certainly, be going short, long, will be mixing it up. And I think you're talking the likes of the Galways, the Limericks, the Tips, they can all do that. It will remain to be seen whether Cork can adjust to it, possibly Waterford. And look, you can never rule Kilkenny out either,
Yeah, well, a lot of interesting things to look forward to over the next couple of weeks. For now, John, Michael, Martin, thanks so much for joining me. And that's all we have time for this week on the Throw-In Podcast in association with Allianz. We'll be back next week with another show. In the meantime, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, or listen on independent.ie. So until next time, thanks for listening and goodbye.
Allianz. Supporting all 32 counties through the Allianz Leagues.